presenter
Awesome.
videos for me.
Great to see everyone. Hi, Danielle and Cheryl as well.
Yes, welcome. Kim, I'm glad you're here too. Well, we should get started. So welcome to Equity in Computer Science. I am Erica Covey, and I am a K-5 computer science teacher in the Auburn School District, and I am also our computer science elementary district lead. And we're doing a lot of work around equity and felt that we wanted to share the things that we've learned around equity in computer science. And then Vicki, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Vicki Bates. I'm currently the Executive Director for Teaching and Learning Services in Franklin Pierce Schools, but I had the pleasure of working with Erica the last 6 years in Auburn when I was Assistant Superintendent of Technology in this work. So it's fun that we still get to keep working on this together.
It is. Thanks. Feel free to use the chat to ask any questions along the way. When you have a question, we might pause it and answer your question, or we might hold it till the end of a segment. But please, we want participation, so use the chat. We would love for you right now to put in there kind of where you're from and what your position is, so we kind of can cater a little bit to our audience. And we'll give you about a minute to do that, and then we'll get started. Got high school, Spokane. Where is Zilla, Danielle? I've heard of that. I'm not from here, so I don't know.
Outside of Yakima, Erica.
Is it? I've been here 13 years now, but I still say I'm not from here. All right, thanks. Okay. Well, the first thing I'd like to do is just acknowledge what is happening, not just around computer science, but just in general within our society. And we're going to be talking a lot about how we can empower groups within computer science that have traditionally been excluded in the development and the use of technology. So recognizing our indigenous peoples that have lived here since the time immemorial recognizes that they're groups that we need to keep in mind as we continue our equity work and the things that we are discussing today. So I'm just going to give you a moment to think about the tribes that are in your area. There's 19 different Puget Sound tribes along the shores. And so just for a moment, think about our indigenous people in your area. So our objectives today is to understand the why equity matters in teaching computer science. And our three main objectives are recognizing that racism and sexism exist within the computer science and the creation of computer science applications, recognizing how these isms are not only created, but then they reinforce the past isms, racism, sexism within computer science, and then identifying what our next steps would be to change these conditions. Right now, I want you guys to just reflect on where are you on this continuum model that comes out of the University of Toronto in Ontario, and what does it mean for you to stand for racial equity? What kind of work do you do towards educational justice? Or do you make proactive changes to address the inequalities within your classroom or within your buildings or within your districts? And really reflect on computer science when you're thinking about this. What are you personally doing? What is your building doing? What is your district doing to work towards the educational justice within computer swhich So are you over here working, against it right now? I think you guys are all here, so you're probably not working against it. But which one of these, you can't see where I'm pointing with my mouse probably, which one of these boxes do you fall in? Oh, thanks, Eugene. Eugenie, interrupt and educate. Yep. You don't need to share, but you're more than willing to share it in the chats. Just starting, educate oneself. That's great. You're recognizing it and you're starting the path. All right. So how do computers make these inequitable decisions? How does it matter what we do, how we're creating these technologies that, why does it matter? Why are we here today? Okay, so some examples that we wanted to share with you, that back in the 1950s when Shirley cards were around, they were developed, that's how they developed film, right? So you took your camera and you had your film, they developed it and they balanced it with these Shirley cards, and they were white women with blue eyes and blonde hair, and that's how they, developed your pictures, was comparing them within the machine to these to make sure your colors were coming out right. So what this in effect did is anybody that was not a white blonde-haired person, their pictures weren't necessarily coming out appropriately. And so that was 1950s, so not even 100 years ago. And then, but let's think more current, 2011. How many of us maybe even still have a car from before 2011? They did not. I'm even thinking about buying a car for my own child soon, and you don't really want to buy a new car for a 16-year-old. But females were not thought of when they did crash testing. They only used the male body shape and size to test cars and seatbelts. So women were disproportionately more injured in car crashes because of this technique. So think about that. All right, thanks. Are you selling one, David? So now AI is, I think, one of the most talked about controversial technologies that are coming out right now. Failure to work accurately with this within women and the BIPOC community are saying that our facial recognition technologies are not able to consistently identify the people of color. They are misidentifying people of color and women at a much higher rate. And so when there's communities that might be using facial recognition for their police force, you can imagine that these past racist data points are now going to be carried forward in their racial recognition applications that they're using. So that is really some of the big reasons of why we are here today, because we, of course, want to move ourselves along that continuum line of offering more equitable opportunities to not only our students, but to society. We are going to do an activity now called, to reading this article, Why Algorithms Can Be Racist and Sexist. There's a couple, wait, did we decide to split it in half, Vicki?
I think we couldn't figure out a good way to do it, so we're just going to try it. And I'm trying to put it in the chat. I can't get my link pasted in, but I'm getting there.
All right, sounds good. So we will post the link in the chats for this. And then after you read the article, there is a read and reflect document we're going to ask you to fill out, and I'm going to share that here.
So Anne, it is not letting me paste into the chat. Is that normal? I don't remember having this trouble before.
I am not sure.
Okay. Let me try here.
I'll keep taking just a second here.
Yes. I'm going to try it and see if it works for me.
Maybe somebody else. Sorry, everybody. Oh, there we go.
There it worked.
Is that the article or the interactive document?
That is the interactive document, but the article is linked in the document. So awesome. This is, after we read the article, you will come back into here and try to answer these 3 questions. What examples are provided by the author to show racist or sexist algorithms? What are the reasons the author suggests for why this occurs? And what questions or ideas does this raise for you as an equity-minded educator? So we're going to give you time to read this article. I will pull it up for you here. But feel free to go and access it via that link I shared as well.
I was able to put it in, Erica, right behind your
great.
post.
Great. So you have access to both of those. And this is what the article looks like. So, nope, wrong tab. That's not what it looks like.
Maybe if someone can give us a thumbs up or a yes in the chat if those links are working for you. This platform is always a little bit awkward.
Okay.
Some of you don't have access to a laptop at home. Or I'm not sure, Cheryl, if that's what we meant here. Okay, great. Looks like several of you are getting it okay. That's awesome. Thank you. So we're going to be quiet for a minute and let you work. I think we're going to check in 12 minutes. Is that right, Erica?
Yep. Sounds good. We'll be back in 12 minutes. All right, even if you haven't had time to finish reading the article, if you could put one little point that wowed you or made you kind of think a little more into the document, that would be great. All right, you want to continue on now? Thank you for all those answers. We will discuss that one. Paragraph that always stands out to me when reading this article is, but who designs it? Who decides how it's deployed? Who gets to decide the level of accuracy and inaccuracy for different groups? Who says it's acceptable? Who gets to decide which applications of AI are unethical and which aren't? And it makes me jump down to AI is new, but does that mean that the existing laws don't apply? We have the Facebook whistleblower, hoping that with that current event going on, maybe some new laws will be put into place so that these large corporations and creating this technology have rules that they're going to have to follow to decrease the amount of racism and sexism that we're experiencing with these technologies. I see definitely a lot of comments on the Amazon resume screening tool. How horrible would it be to be applying for a position and based on something you put on your resume could never be seen. Like there's no possible way it would ever be seen by somebody. Let me go back to that. What else were we putting in here? Yeah, the husband-wife credit application, and just thinking that the data sets that we're entering and the data science that we're learning about, and that human-centered, I like how you said the human-centered lens, applying it within our equity lens, making sure that those are matching. Definitely the system was built to favor men over women. And who's sitting at that table, right? Like who are making those decisions and creating those data sets and writing those algorithms? Who is at that table? How will the data be fixed? It's a great question. And I like what Mary put in the chats. Just because an algorithm's data is accurate doesn't mean that it's fair or ethical. Definitely. And using past data sets does not mean that it's going to be appropriate for future situations. I mean, we think about if we're using the data sets for a police AI technology of some sort and we're using the past data sets on who gets arrested more, that's just going to perpetuate who continues to get arrested more. Vicki, do you want to add anything?
No, I had some connections I think to make when we get to a later spot. Thank you though.
Okay. Yep. All right. Any other comments or questions on this? AIs are built on the biases of the creator. Absolutely, David. Thank you for pointing that out. They are. We all have our biases, whether we're aware of them or not, but we bring them to the table. Talking again about who is at that table, we're bringing our biases to the table. And that's why it's so important at that table that you have a diverse set of work teams. If you don't have a diverse set of work teams creating those documents, or the technology, you're going to get out of it what is being put into it. And so we need to make sure that we're putting in the correct experiences. I'm going to go back to my slides. Yeah. Maybe, not sure what happened. Try again. There we go. All right. So when work teams have diverse representation, they're more innovative and produce better products. One of the most fascinating research that we discovered was that patents awarded for informational technology inventions over the past 25 years were rated by the number of subsequent patents that cited them. So technology patents which were produced by mixed gender teams received up to 42% more citations than those of their single gender counterpoints. And then if you've read the Computational Thinking and Coding for Every Student, when work teams have diverse representation, they are more innovative and they produce better products. And then when the Olympics aired back in not February, that's when the next Olympics are coming. Back in, I think it was July, I don't know. There was a commercial that just wowed me. And I can't remember the company now, but it was all about having a diverse work team. And they actually showed how and why having a diverse work team at that table made their products better. And so we are going to put that link in the chat. So we're not going to play it, but it's there for you to view at a later time. And then I'm going to kind of shift it over to Vicki. We're going to play the video first, Vicki.
Yeah, so we're going to, we've kind of been looking at kind of what's happening, right, in society through this article at the use of computer science. And so then we're going to kind of return to visit the schoolhouse for a minute and think about specifically what's going on in our schools and make some connections around that. So we're just going to watch a brief video. It's about 5 minutes, and it's around how we engage students in computer science and who's engaged. So be thinking about what does that pathway look like in your system? Do you see observations and comments in the video that are also reflective of your system? What else might be happening there? So yeah, if you could cue the video, Erica, that would be great.
Welcome to AP Computer Science at a high school in San Francisco. If you come visit the class, you'll quickly notice rigorous instruction and a qualified teacher, a class that everybody in the high school should be taking. Unfortunately, if you look around the room, you'll also notice that the school's population is not represented in this class. There are far more males than females, and there are few, if any, students of color. This leads me to wonder, why aren't all students taking this class? What is causing this inequity?
School districts is that it really depends on where you live as to what kind of access you have to courses that involve higher order thinking and problem solving. So in the neighborhoods and schools in low socioeconomic status areas, you'll find that the coursework for kids starting all the way in kindergarten on going up to 12th grade is more intervention work. And it's sad because it doesn't leave them room for anything else. They don't get access to music, they don't get access to art, they definitely don't have access to computer science.
At least for like our beginning challenges, if you were a female versus a male and you were starting the challenge, you had equally likelihood of actually completing the challenge. However, we still have a tendency for more males to be coding in our curriculum than females. So we have about like 66% male and 34% female. And that's interesting because Khan Academy is actually, as a whole, it's about 50-50. So it means that there's still more males that are somehow self-selecting to learn programming on Khan Academy. And, you know, for whatever reason, maybe society makes them think they can, maybe they have more confidence, whatever.
Typically take the view that all girls are underrepresented in computer science. Within that group, there are obviously women who are even more underrepresented. So low-income students, as well as students of color, are vastly underrepresented in the sector.
So when I first saw my roster and I counted how many boys and how many girls were in the class, it was about 70% boys and only 30% girls. I think society as a whole exposes technology to boys at a way younger age, and they get interested in a lot of more. Girls are not so much exposed to it.
So for instance, you said that there are computer science classes available at the high school level, but you go into the classroom and the majority of the people in that classroom are male. So they don't sort of see themselves or envision themselves in that role, largely because of what is reflected in the sector, right? So you look inside of Twitter and it's 90% male. It's definitely more difficult for girls to see themselves in that.
I mean, I think it's representative of the greater equity issue around education in general. Like, I don't think there's necessarily like aspects to this that are different. It's just we're continuing to perpetuate the same things. So like, I think that typically schools that are more proactive in getting programs into their school are more proactive about getting computer science into their school. And like places that are able to afford like really nice computer labs for their classrooms are more likely to have it. What bothers me is that because we have this knowledge and because we're at such an early stage, we have an opportunity to have no equity issue. Like if we're just intentional and smart about what we're doing, there's no reason that we can't just be equitable because everything else is there in theory.
So like, what do you think it would take to change that?
I think the number one thing is just exposure. I think if more teachers did like that hour of code, then the girls would think, oh, this is actually pretty fun and I might want to do more. It's just even that 1 hour, you see the spark at night. If they don't have exposure at all, they don't know what they're missing. Once you expose them to it, they're more likely to want to try it and go into it more deeply.
Like the approach of like, I am making this service and anybody can use it if they want to is not good enough. That's the problem. Is it like,
if you like have people go out of their way to say like, you know, this is something we want you to do, it's important that you do this, then we can actually reach the 50-50 mark. But if we just rely on people organically selecting themselves to do it, then we can't reach that, right? And sometimes that means actually creating dedicated organizations and clubs for that, right? Because if you create a club that's called Girls Who Code and you're a girl, then you feel like, oh, there's a high likelihood that I belong in that club. But if it's just a coders club, you might doubt yourself.
But if you just like recognize the opportunities when they arise, even if you're not actually doing anything proactive, that helps.
Erica, I'm thinking it might be useful to just put that Vimeo link in the chat, and then if people want to grab it and use it with their own staff, they could do that. Would you mind doing that for us after we go back to the slides?
Yep, I'll get on that.
Awesome, thank you. So this issue of participation, which was a big theme in the video, and who's participating in computer science has definitely been a focus to us in Auburn. So we want to show you that data on our next slide. This is a 3-year comparison, if you will, of how we were tracking. It's kind of the pre-COVID look. So everything is so disrupted right now, but it's really kind of how we were monitoring which of our students were involved in any high school computer science class. And we only had 4% of our overall student body who were engaged. But on the left-hand side, you see the 3-year trajectory of girls versus boys, which really was not seeing a dent. Then you see our white and non-white students in the middle. So we were seeing some shifting in terms of the racial diversity that was showing in those classes. And then on the right-hand side, we were monitoring engagement of free and reduced lunch and non-free and reduced lunch students. So it's a strategy we'd really recommend that you take and be watching, because it gives us a sense of what's happening there. So with this in mind, one of the speakers we got to hear in the National CSTA conference last year, it was really awesome, is Charity Freeman from the University of Illinois. So if you're a Twitter person, you might follow her there. She's a great follow. And she has a concept that she talks about of the null curriculum, and kind of what are we actually communicating to kids by what's absent, either absent in their experience, absent within the courses they're taking, absent within the discourse in their classroom. So how are we, thinking about that showing up? And in her conversation around this, it really helped us kind of think about kind of what's our elevator speech? How do we really anchor our advocacy in some key ideas? So the first message that we think this sends to students, this absence idea, when we don't have racially, linguistically diverse students, we don't have girls either in our classes, or we're not offering an elementary experience that's inclusive of all students, we're really saying to them that computer science is not for you. And I was really struck by this photo is actually from Northeastern University on their website, how they promote their computer science program to participate in that. So clearly, when I look at this picture, I'm reminded of what you heard in the video too, that we know in the industry of computer science, it's predominantly white men. And unless we're changing what that looks like in our classes, we're reinforcing that message for students. So in this next slide, you see kind of just a visual of when we think about the different students that are represented in Auburn. Most of our students are actually in a population group or in a group that have been historically and are currently underrepresented in the field of computing. So really making up for that difference is a key area of focus that needs to be in place. We also heard, I think, our speaker at lunchtime right before these sessions talk about these very same numbers. And this is just another view that code.org provides us of the representation in the computer science field, and that if we continue at our same rate, it'll take us over a century to make this change and to have it be more representative. So again, I think you've heard that in multiple ways today. So there's a second key message that we think is really important here. I know that when we read the article, the resume story really stood out to you. But whenever we're about to do this presentation, I just go online and I search like artificial intelligence and racism, or artificial intelligence and sexism. It's amazing what is out there. And really, when we think about our girls, women, and our BIPOC students and their families, they really are the most vulnerable populations when it comes to the misuses of technology. So represented here, we're reminded about algorithm misuses in facial recognition, predatory advertising, bias in hiring, judicial sentence scoring, all of these ways that computer science is being misapplied or being applied in ways that's harmful to groups in our communities. So by not really engaging students in learning about this discipline, it's reinforcing for them that, yeah, this is something where harm is done to you, but you're really not empowered to make a change in that. I was struck yesterday. I was driving through a lower income neighborhood, and I saw a one of the cash advance kind of businesses, and I thought, oh, there's so much of technology that's just taken that online. What are the kinds of advertisements that Facebook is pushing to people based on their race, assumptions about income, and this whole technology world? So I think that Charity Freeman actually says it really well in this next slide. I love her summary about this, just reminding us that the people that are being affected by the isms of society that are now being baked into our technology, I think a couple of you had comments in the chat that reflected that as well, are now being excluded from opportunities where they could really influence and impact how those technologies are showing up in their lives. And for me personally, like this is the biggest reason we really need to have computer science for all students and make these changes in our schools. I think there was a recommendation on a movie that was in the chat, so thank you for that. Also, if you have not seen Coded Bias, this is a movie that Netflix produced last year. We'd highly recommend that you have a chance to watch that and watch that with your colleagues, because it really gets at so many of these issues in terms of making this a second message point. Finally, the third message that we think is important to remember too is that computer science is a great source of wealth and income for families and people in the world and in America today. And by excluding student groups from this, we're really messaging to them that this financial opportunity is not for you. You know, we know that over the course of a lifetime, someone who's studying computer science will have significantly greater income and an opportunity to see those wealth gaps close in our country. Another piece of code.org data on our next slide just reminds us that, you know, computing jobs are the top source of new wages in the United States across every state and being available at twice the rate of other jobs. And we took a few of the data points from Washington as well that are here for you. So runs a little bit behind where we are now. So in 2017, the average computer salary in Washington State was $112,623, which is almost twice the median income for other jobs in the state. So again, a really significant economic opportunity for people in this field. We're right in the middle of the decade. Oops, sorry, Erica, I have a few more things on that slide. We're right in the middle of the decade at which 73% of all the job growth in Washington State is in STEM right now and in computer occupations specifically. And Washington State is actually third in the country in terms of STEM job growth, with computer science opportunities being the #1 area nationally. So many opportunities here for students that we, if we have justice in mind, we would want to be able to prepare them for. Thanks, Erica. We were reminded of something recently in our own local community, and it'd be interesting how this shows up for other people, but there was actually a report in our very local paper here about just what it takes to rent an apartment right here in Auburn, little old Auburn, in South King County. And the estimate is that you have to make $36 an hour to afford average rent, which is really more than 2 minimum wage jobs. So yeah, just the financial needs and impacts in our society today are great for kids. And this computer science field gives us one way to think about that. We would encourage you to also to go to the Washington STEM site, so you can actually see by different area. If you're making, again, this advocacy pitch and case and in your local school district, this is the view for Seattle, King County area. And again, you see that this #1 area, just all the things I've been saying is just showing you in a different way, is in this computer and mathematical area in terms of job availability. So there are definitely resources for you that help you communicate that. So we're going to go back for a moment to that educational justice continuum that we looked at the beginning of our session, and thinking about the messages for students. Are they included? Is computer science for them? Do they have the power to intervene and make a change in how computers are impacting their communities and their lives? And do they have access to the economical benefits that could come to them through efforts in this field? So I want you to think about kind of where are you in responding to that, and what would be sort of a next step in that journey. Erica and I typically do this in a 2 or 3 hour workshop in our region or our school district, and we spend over an hour on the how. And so we're just going to do a little bit of a teaser of some things to think about with that, beyond just thinking about our basic participation. And before handing back to Erica to talk about some of those systems pieces, I also want to encourage you to really think about starting early. So it was great to see that we have some elementary people here. We could move one slide, Erica. We had some elementary, some ESD folks here, and we would really encourage you not to think about this as a secondary school issue, but really to think about it as a systems issue. And you heard in the video, I think one of the speakers talked about this, the idea that kids decide if something is for them and isn't for them. And the way our society works right now, we have more exposure and more reinforcement in technology for boys than girls. And when we were doing some partnering actually with our colleagues in Bellevue School District, they connected us to some research here that we think is really important, that by our primary grades, kids have already decided like what's for them, like what kinds of jobs might they see themselves in, and have these stereotypes in math and science and technology. So it's very important to think about how are we making these opportunities available for our youngest students. You see here in this experience, just allowing first grade girls to have some time with robotics, a very small amount of time, would increase their interest in the computer science and engineering field. So thinking about that continuum and what might be your next step to nudge forward, Erica is going to share with you some other systems pieces that we have worked on and think are important considerations as well.
Yes, and just one thing to add is how little that takes. 20 minutes playing with a robot can change the course of a girl's life. And so keeping that in mind as we go into these systems thinking is very key. So again, this slide is an hour and a half. We broke it down into, I think, one or two slides. So some things we want you to think about is first, just acknowledge that there are Washington State computer science standards in all K through 12 grades. Thinking about how you might want to deliver computer science within the elementary classroom. You know, would an elementary do a specialist-based model, or would they do a classroom-based model? Identifying middle school models. Students' interests, are they going to get to choose their elective? They're interested in it, or do you do some type of scheduling where every student gets a quarter or some sort of rotation and gets exposure to computer science? And then in high school, do you have those high school pathways set? And are they available to all kids? Or are only some of your kids able to access those opportunities based on the other core requirements? Analyzing who is in the CS classes and who is benefiting by those classes. Can you improve those opportunities and how they are benefiting from them? And then, of course, supporting effective classroom practice. We are going to leave these with you, some resources that we have found over the years. The Washington State Learning Standards. We've created some curriculum supports, how to embed computer science within the general subjects, to use a classroom-based model so that you have access to that. The OSBI created an amazing guidance and teaching document for computer science, and it breaks down every single standard K through 12 and gives learning examples. And I just highly recommend, if you have not already, to check that document out. We talked already about analyzing who is in and benefiting. And then by supporting effective classroom practices, we put on there just some more information on different teaching approaches on how you could support teachers and support classroom practice. And then we also have provided additional readings. Not sure what happened. Oh, I clicked on a link. Sorry. Oh, you didn't see that. So additional readings for you. There's some great resources out there. There's many more than we have put here, but if you need a place to get started, this would be a great list for you to find to get additional information on one of these books and resources. And then Vicki.
Thanks, Erica. I can't tell if they'll post the slide deck, so maybe we can pop the link in for a read version of that too, as we're doing this next activity, and then people can have those links if that would be helpful. So we've come back to that continuum a couple times and asked you to be thinking about, you know, what is the next step for you that would really move you and your team forward and toward, whoop.
I'm just showing it again.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's okay. Yeah, the slide of we were on would be great with the wrong way sign. And so I want you to take a moment and just be reminded, right, that I love that on the left-hand side of the continuum, it says that, you know, if you know some things, but you're really not doing anything about it, you still are supporting, you are not supporting educational justice, right, and anti-racist practices. So that idea of complicity is really another way that we're not advancing forward. And if we get stuck in just reading and learning and reflecting, those are really not action-oriented behaviors that make a difference for kids. And so I want you to take a moment as we get ready to wrap up today and identify, you know, what is a next action step that you can take toward providing computer science for all students, creating this equitable education access that we want. And I want to invite you to put an idea in the chat that you are going to take away from this session with you to help you move forward. So I'm going to be quiet for a minute, be watching for those in the chat. All right, so I think 15 of us are here thinking about these issues of equity and computer science in our district. So we're watching in the chat for what's a step that will move you forward. Thanks for getting us started, Cheryl. Yeah, I'm really interested in thinking about a data science. Well, data science, we've talked about that throughout our K-12 curriculum, but in particular, what might those options be for our high school students? And maybe even in lieu of Algebra 3-4, if you're not aware, that's kind of a national conversation and position that's being taken as an option for that course. So if anybody's working on that out there, I would love to collaborate around that in our thinking in Franklin Pierce. What else is coming to mind for you? It might be as simple as, hey, I'm going to get clear on my own advocacy statement. I'm going to share something I've learned today with a colleague. What's coming to mind for you? I think the course is going to cut us off here in just a moment, and we are not going to get to our closing video, but I'm posting the link in the chat. I would encourage you to grab it, and just for your own reflection in these last 5 minutes before you go back to the main group. It's just a 3-minute video, but a really powerful reminder to us of why we're talking about these pieces today. So that's the time link that's there. Thank you, Bethany. Happy to have other ideas come in as our time closes here. Awesome. Taking that forward with a coding club. Super. Oh, great. Thank you, Anne. So sharing resources. We hope all of you can share some of these back with your colleagues as well. Awesome. Yeah, Danielle, it doesn't have to be a separate class, right? How do we embed it? I think we were aiming originally, Erica, for just like 20 to 30 minutes a week in each classroom. And if you need a place to start, the code.org curriculum is free and really inclusive of many great resources for students. We didn't end there, but we started there, and it was helpful for us.
It's a great starting point.
We'd love to be at your STEM Summit, David. I think the last slide here, Erica can advance that, has our contact information.
Yeah.
The video we didn't see is from Joy Bolamwini, who's a researcher in this field. And she's so optimistic about creating a bright future in the face of these challenges. So I really hope you watch that time video. Charity's last name is Freeman, Charity Freeman. David, where were you? You weren't the Zilla. I think you were filling us in about Zilla and Yakima, but oh, you're so welcome. We were told this would actually turn off at 1:55, so I'm looking at the time and thinking we're going to disappear any moment, but we'll just hang out here and respond to other questions and comments. And Oh, Toppenish. Fantastic. Would love that. David is trying to remember where Henry Strom is superintendent. Is that Toppenish? I always try to Grandview. Thank you. I was going to say, I'm always trying to keep straight on the Grandview, Granger, Toppenish, Zilla, that different region there. So thank you. You're welcome, Anne. Thanks everybody for being here with us today. We'll just, you're more than welcome to reach out to either of us for questions, follow-up ideas, collaboration. Erica, anything else?
No, yes. Thank you everyone for being here. And yeah, feel free to reach out to questions to myself or Vicky. We are more than happy to help you in this work. I guess I can't speak for Vicky, but I think she is.
You're welcome. Now I'm feeling like we could have showed the joy
know.
video. We were so worried about disappearing.
I guess we could start it if it gets cut off.
True. Yeah, we'll just play out with that and see what happens.
We'll get it going.
I'm going to put it in here one more time in case you didn't get a chance to grab it. She is fabulous. Oh, I think we're down to mostly just you and I, Erica. There's like two people here.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But you could put it and whoever's here can enjoy.
My heart smiles as I bask in their legacies, knowing their lives have altered many destinies. In her eyes, I see my mother's poise. In her face, I glimpse my auntie's grace. In this case of deja vu, a 19th century question comes into view. In a time when Sojourner Truth asked, "Ain't I a woman?" Today, we pose this question to new powers, making bets on artificial intelligence, hope towers. The Amazonians peek through windows blocking deep blues as faces increment scars. Old burns, new urns, collecting data chronicling our past, often forgetting to deal with gender, race, and class. Again, I ask, ain't I a woman? Face by face, the answers seem uncertain. Young and old, proud icons are dismissed. Can machines ever see my queens as I view them? Can machines ever see our grandmothers as we knew them? Ida B. Wells, data science pioneer, hanging facts, stacking stats on the lynching of humanity, teaching truths hidden in data, each entry and omission, a person worthy of respect. Shirley Chisholm, unbought and unbossed, the first Black Congresswoman, but not the first to be misunderstood by machines well-versed in data-driven mistakes. Michelle Obama, unabashed and unafraid to wear her crown of history, yet her crown seems a mystery to systems unsure of her hair. A wig, a bouffant, a toupee, maybe not. Are there no words for our braids and our locks? Does relaxed hair and sunny skin make Oprah the first lady? Even for her face well known, some algorithms fault her, echoing sentiments that strong women are men. We laugh, celebrating the successes of our sisters with serena smiles. No label is worthy of our beauty.